It's Brother DL signing off for the Prophet's Republic. Grace to you and peace from God our Father. Let's go. Okay, folks, today we're going to be discussing the false interpretation of Hebrews chapter 5, verse 7 by our Muslim friends. We're going to debunk it both contextually and lexically. The chief verse is chapter 5, verse 7, as was stated. In the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverence. This is a verse that's constantly used by Muslims to claim it corroborates what was written 600 years after the time of Jesus in Surah chapter 4, verse 157 of the Quran. However, we're going to deal with that later. Right now, we're going to see who this person Jesus is who's mentioned or being spoken of in chapter 5, verse 7. Who's the subject of chapter 5, verse 7? So also Christ did not exalt himself to be made a high priest, but was appointed by him who said to him, "You are my son, today I've begotten you." As he also says in another place, "You are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek." In the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverence. Although he was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered, and being made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation to all who obey him. Who is the subject of Hebrews chapter 5, verse 7? Who was he? He was the Son of God, thus making God his Father. He was a priest of the order of Melchizedek. He was a man who suffered, as the prophecy said of him in Isaiah 53:3 and verse 10, and he is the source of eternal life. Is this the Isa ibn Maryam of the Quran? I don't think so. Is this the Isa ibn Maryam of Islam? Absolutely not. Before Hebrews chapter 5, verse 7, the book says that Jesus died. Here's the evidence. But we do see Jesus, who was made lower than the angels for a little while, now crowned with glory and honor because he suffered death, so that by the grace of God, he might taste death for everyone. And since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, so that by his death he might break the power of him who holds the power of death. That is the devil. By his death he might break the power of him who holds the power of death. Notice, folks, this is twice before we get to chapter 5, verse 7 of Hebrews, that Jesus dies. After Hebrews chapter 5, verse 7, the book also says that Jesus died. For this reason, Christ is the mediator of a new covenant, that those who are called may receive the promised eternal inheritance, now that he has died as a ransom to set them free from the sins committed under the first covenant. Chapter 9, verse 15. Now that he has died as a ransom. Let's see. Are we supposed to believe, reading the book of Hebrews in a linear fashion, that when we get to chapter 5, verse 7, that the apostle reneged on his earlier claim of Christ's death? And following chapter 5, verse 7, are we to posit the same? No. On the lexical level, the Islamic interpretation fails as well. The text reads, during his earthly life, he offered prayers and appeals with loud cries and tears to the one who was able to save him from death. This is the principal passage, the principal text. And he was heard because of his reverence. The English word from is translated from the Koine Greek preposition ek, which means out of. Consulting W.E. Vines, the Expanded Vines Expository Dictionary of New Testament Words, page 1270, we find out that the preposition ek, translated as from, has the primary meaning of out of. However, another Greek preposition which is commonly used is translated as from is apo, whose chief expression means out of or away from. The distinction is largely seen in this, that apo suggests a starting point from without, outside of something, whereas ek suggests a starting point from within. Therefore, when the text says that Jesus was saved from death, or that God was able to save him from death, it means that he was able to save him out of death. He had to first be in death before God raised him out of death. So a more literal translation would read as follows: during his earthly life, he offered prayers and appeals with loud cries and tears to the one who was able to save him out of death, and he was heard because of his reverence. This corresponds to Peter's preaching in Acts chapter 2, verses 23 through 24. This Jesus, delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, you crucified and killed by the hands of lawless men. However, God raised him up, loosing the pains of death, because it was not possible for him to be held by it. It was not possible for death to hold Jesus. So first, Jesus was in death, and God delivered him out of death. He raised him from the dead. So to our Muslim friends, please stop misusing the Holy Scriptures for the purpose of trying to justify your false, paganistic, antichrist, and satanic religion. Your only solution is Jesus Christ. As the Apostle Peter says, this Jesus is the stone that was rejected by you builders, which has become the cornerstone, and there is salvation in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved. There is no salvation in Islam. Brother DL signing off for the Prophet's Republic.